just when you thought it was safe to go onto iTunes. This is Next Level Guy, the only website that makes self-development as fun as going to the movies. It's time to take the red pill and escape the Matrix.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Next Level Guy Show podcast with your host, Ian Dawson-Mackay. Today's a special day for me as this is episode number 50, something I never thought I'd see when I first started the show. I'm really proud that I've reached episode number 50 and I won't be stopping anytime soon. I've got a number of massive names coming up for the next few interviews and some many more signing up weekly. So it's a very exciting time if you're a fan of the podcast. I would just like to take this opportunity to say a thank you. A thank you to you if you've listened to each and every episode, or even if this is your very first episode you're joining me with. I'd like to say thanks to those friends and strangers who I've met while doing the podcast, and each and every person who have interviewed on the show. Even to those people who have ridiculed me and to those people who have supported me. I could not have done the show without you, so I'm thankful for each and every one of you. I've learned so much as I was doing this show, and I get such an enjoyment out of this. I'm really chuffed that each of you would join me to listening to me waffling away and listening to the great advice, enjoyment, motivation and enlightenment that each guest gives. I'm just getting started on my own podcast voyage, and I thought it was only fitting that for my first big number show I would speak to somebody about podcasting. And to be honest, podcast hosts don't get much bigger than this guest. Today's guest is Lee Dumas. He's one of my favourite podcast hosts. He's the host of Entrepreneurs on Fire, an award-winning podcast where he interviews inspiring entrepreneurs every Monday and drops value bombs every Thursday. With over 2,000 episodes, 1.3 million listens every month, and 7 figures of annual revenue, JLD is just getting started. If you visit his site at EOFFire, that's EOFIRE.com, to set your entrepreneurial journey on fire. And in this short interview, myself and JLD cover podcasting, if podcasting is right for you, and how you can build a podcast that will set fire to the charts and ignite your listeners' passion. And yes, I am cringing at those puns. But before we get to the interview, I just want to say a quick word about the affiliates. As you'll know if you're a regular listener, I've set up a number of great deals, relationships with some awesome companies. This allows me to obtain special discount codes, listener exclusives, and one-off specials. For more information on these, please go to www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates for further information. For example, if you want to optimize your health, then you need to try Onnit. Onnit sell some amazing fitness equipment and supplements. If you use the code NEXTLEVELGUY, that's NEXTLEVELGUY is one word in the discount code section of the checkout, you'll get 10% off any eligible items in your basket of great supplements and fitness gear. You should really check out Alpha Brain, which is a cognitive enhancer that makes your brain work more effectively and it gives you a more kind of fluid way of thinking. There are also a number of free trials and supplements there that you can take advantage of. For others, I'm particularly loving The Way of the Seal book by Commander Mark Devine. That is coming up shortly. It's a great book with a lot of concrete action advice, which is amazing. Another book I'm really enjoying is Ross Edgley's The World's Fittest Book. I can't seem to put it down. I want to read a page and I end up reading a chapter. I've read bits over and over. It's that good. You really should check it out. He's currently swimming around the entire Great Britain at the moment just to challenge himself, so you can imagine the tips and hints he gives in his book. I'm also loving my very comfy barbell apparel jeans which I bought, and if you want your own pair you just use Next Level Guy in the discount code section and you'll get 10% off your orders there. They're super comfy, they fit like a glove and they make you look awesome. What more could you want? So if you want to check out all the free trials, special offers, listener deals, etc. that are available, please go to www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates or simply go and check it out in the menu bar, which is up on the top right. I just want to say thank you again. thank you for listening, and I hope you get as much out of this as I do producing it. So let's get to this interview with John Lee Dumas. I hope you enjoy. Now, podcasting has exploded recently. You know, people are so excited about it, but many people don't know how to proceed with it, if their idea is good or bad. You know, is there a checklist anybody listening can find out if their idea is good enough? How do they know if podcasting is the right medium? Or do they just give it a go and hope for the best?
You know what's interesting with your comment about the idea is I actually did recognize fairly recently that entrepreneurs who succeed with podcasting and really just with business in general have one thing in common. And this is from over 2,000 interviews with successful entrepreneurs to date. They have one big idea and they go all in, singular, one big idea. And so I can even give some really strategic advice here because I actually identified the process of coming up with what that big idea is. And I can share with them right now because what I see a lot of podcasters struggle with is they start a podcast kind of haphazardly. They're like, oh, well, so-and-so is having good luck with this podcast or so-and-so is doing well with this. I think I'll do the same thing because it sounds pretty cool and maybe I'll have some success too, but it's not their big idea. And it's not something they're like incredibly passionate about and curious about and excited about and knowledgeable about. And so because of that, they lose momentum, they lose focus, they lose interest, and their podcast just kind of peters off. Sometimes, you know, right when it could have started taking off because they didn't have their big idea, the North Star to start. So that's why I actually created, which is a completely free training called 3 Hours to Your Big Idea. So Ian, if anybody wants to really get in the weeds about what their big idea is, they just need to give me 3 hours and I'll give them their big idea. And that's over at yourbigidea.io.
I like it. So how do you keep this momentum going? You know, the interviewing every day, the creating the products. How do you avoid that burnout, that point where you just go, yeah, okay, that's enough? You know, do you delegate your workload to like virtual assistants and things like that? Or have you just picked a topic that just ignites you, just gets you out of bed daily? How do you avoid that burnout and that point where people just give up, that kind of tipping point to success?
Well, both of what you said. I definitely do delegate a lot of stuff that I don't enjoy doing to my virtual assistant. Number two, I definitely do enjoy interviewing entrepreneurs and having conversations with successful business men and women. That is something I really do get a big kick out of. And honestly, number three, which is a huge thing that I think a lot of people underestimate, is batching. Like I do all of my interviews on one single day. So I wake up and I know that today's the day. I'm just going to crush, 8, 10, and sometimes up to 16 interviews in one single day. And that to me is like running a marathon. I'm like, you know what? I'm waking up this morning. I'm going to run 26.2 miles. Well, I'm going to wake up this morning and I'm going to interview 8 people. It's going to be a long day and it's going to be mentally exhausting. And by the end, I'm definitely going to be ready for, a nice cold drink. But guess what? By the end, I'm going to have interviewed 8 entrepreneurs. It's going to be a way for me to batch. So instead of just having to wake up every morning and be like, okay, I got another interview today and another interview today and another interview today, that's how you get burned out. But now I do it in batching and it gives me a long break. So now for another week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I don't even have to think about interviewing anybody because I've done a batch that's going to let me schedule those out for a long period of time ahead. So I think that we all need to look at the tasks that we need to do. Number one, we do need to enjoy them. Number two, we need to delegate what we don't enjoy doing. And number three, we need to really have those sprints where we're just doing a lot of creative awesomeness and then taking a long break and a rest and go reward yourself. Like go watch a movie, go for a walk, go for a swim, whatever your definition of enjoyment is, go do that thing. That's huge.
Because that's the thing, isn't it? Is everybody assumes if you're not one of those people that does 24/7 work, hardly sleeps, then you're not being successful, but you're being busy for the sake of being busy rather than being productive. So how do you prep for a guest? How do you get to the point where you can be like have the love and the interest in what that guest stands for and what their message is, and avoid, just the standard questions that you see so many podcasts throwing out again and again, and you could just change the name at the top.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about the questions for me is I'm all about curiosity. So I don't spend any time researching my guests because I know that they're going to have something very interesting to talk about, because I do know what the topic of our conversation is, because I do make them come up with the title of what I call these audio master classes. But beyond that, and maybe a few bullet points that they send over about the major points, I don't really know much about them or what we're going to talk about. And I like that, because that's what my listeners are at the same time. They don't know a ton because they haven't done the research on this person. So I don't want to have the curse of knowledge. I don't want to have just this thought process of like, oh, I know that, so my listeners must as well. So I'm not even going to ask the question. Like, I want to be curious. I want to ask the questions that I'm burning to ask, that when I listen to other podcasts and I'm like, oh, I just wish they would ask this question I'm so curious about it, and they never do. I'm like, oh, like I want to ask those questions. So I take that that stance of being not really that knowledgeable about what I'm getting into allows me to be curious and ask some great questions. But guess what? I also love other podcasts where the person does go really in depth with the research and the details. So they bring out these really cool things that might not otherwise have come up. So I think there's two sides to the coin. I don't think either one's right or either one's wrong. I just choose to become a person of curiosity within these interviews.
That's a really interesting way of doing it, because I interview quite a lot of people from different areas, and I really research them and I go deep into it. And I think that scares me, just the thought of, just connecting and going, okay, let's see where this goes. But
well, then let me ask you, in your deep research of me, what was the thing that most surprised you in your research of me?
I don't know, to be honest. I like the way that, like, the passion that you came out with, that it was always, you're bringing it together in the end goal. But I don't know, I don't think there was anything that really kind of blew me away with you. Like, it was just the fact that everything was so well thought out. Everything was so, like, I listened to an interview you did today. I think it was like one of your, you answered the questions, and it was about the concept of an avatar. And you sat with a reader and you broke it down, and I think in 2 minutes you had fixed a potential issue I had with my site, whereas I have maybe 45 interviews, but it's not a community at the moment. I'm not building it into a central theme. And just 2 minutes listening to any of your interviews, I usually come away with, you've just fixed one of my problems. It's like you're reading somebody's mind. It's like you go into what we need. It's like you're listening to a conversation we're having, basically, and you fix it. I love it. So, I mean, where does that come from? Is that, is it just scratching your own kind of itch, or are you literally...
It's that, but it's also just having interviewed 2,000 entrepreneurs. Like, I've really identified, number one, a great way to communicate by being succinct, by getting to the point, by not kind of beating around the topic, but by just really getting in to the meat and the potatoes, because that's what I want. I don't want to waste your time as a listener. I don't want to waste my time as a host. I don't want to waste my time when I'm a guest. Like, I want to get in there. I want to deliver the meat, deliver the potatoes, leave the fluff for somebody else, and then get back to business.
So somebody listening just now, they're coming out with the usual BS, oh, I've got kids, oh, I don't have the time, oh, I can't afford them. We can avoid all those kind of questions. But I mean, is there really any legitimate reason you think it's best to wait, or should a podcast just be started and just flow and just see where it goes?
It has to just be started, because you're going to be so bad when you start, and then you're going to be kind of bad in 100 episodes, and you're going to be kind of okay in 500 episodes. So you just have to start. I mean, give yourself a 30-day challenge. Download anchor.fm and just go on there, and for 30 days commit to leaving at least a 5-minute audio recording, which is a podcast, by the way, on anchor.fm, and just see how you feel after 30 days, because you might realize after 30 days, this isn't really my thing. Well, good. Now you're not going to waste any time, energy, or effort thinking about doing it in the future. You can move on to something else, and that can be a much better use of your time. Or you might find out that you fall in love with it and say, okay, wow, that was cool. Now I'm really ready to get serious about this. And then, you jump onto, a real podcasting platform like a Libsyn, like a podcast websites, and then you're off to the races.
Well, I mean, you basically answered my next question was, what challenges would you set somebody listening for the next 6 months, or the next 30 days, just to get them going, getting that consistency? So out of all the people you've interviewed, has there been any interviews, if somebody wanted to check out Fire Nation, what 3 would you drive them towards? Is there any ones that you've been particularly proud of or have changed the way you viewed life or a certain aspect?
Yeah, I've actually put some of my favorite interviews up at eofire.com/top 10. So if you just go to that URL, you'll see my top 10 interviews, and those are just really fun ones that I've done.
Yeah, I mean, because I always love like when people do that, and it shows about the community, and if somebody was just now thinking, okay, I like the idea of Fire Nation, how do I find that word? How do I find that North Star? The thing that drives me. If they're sitting just now thinking, okay, I want to start a podcast, how do we build this together to make it different to all the other 90,000 podcasts in the same area?
I think one thing you really have to focus on when you're building anything, whether it be a podcast or fill in the blank, is what is the unique problem that you are solving for real people. So you need to go have real conversations with real people. You need to get on forums, Facebook groups, wherever it might be, in-person meetups, conferences, and have real conversations with real people. Ask about their biggest problems. A great way to ask that is just to say, what is your number one struggle right now? And just let them answer that question and then have those conversations and really understand the themes that keep coming up for people over and over again. And then say, is this a problem that I want to solve? And if the answer is yes, then build your content around that solution. That's big.
And is there an unusual fact about yourself that you haven't talked about, you haven't mentioned yet? Is there something that I love asking the guests this, is there something that blows people away when they find out about you?
No, to your initial question about that I haven't talked about, because I just talk about everything and I don't keep anything behind closed doors. So one thing that does seem to blow people away, though, is the fact that I did win a car on The Price is Right. And I don't know if you know of that show in Scotland, but it's basically a game show where you go on and you kind of perform one of many games. But it's literally probably the biggest game show in the United States. I mean, everybody growing up here watched it when they were home from school sick or snow days or whatever it might be. And back in 2011, I won a car, and you can go to eofire.com/about to watch me win that car.
Oh, and was that with Drew Carey? Carey, I think his name is.
Yeah, it was Drew Carey.
I remember that show, yeah. Well, I cannot thank you enough. I know we've only got the 15 minutes, but, your show is definitely one of those that every new podcaster should check out. You're given a masterclass with every episode. Your question and answering sessions are superb, and it's amazing how 2 minutes can potentially give you a successful business. What message do you want people to remember about podcasting, running their own show, becoming their own boss? If you had to sum it up, a take-home message, what would you give them?
I would say this. Try not to become a person of success, but become a person of value. That's an Albert Einstein quote. And if you really want to become your own boss, you can't chase success. You have to say, how can I provide massive value? And that's what I did with Entrepreneurs on Fire. It was just free, valuable, and consistent content day after day after day. And then success found me. So focus on giving value first. And again, back to an earlier thing that I said, in a very specific and focused niche that solves a real problem, and you're off to the races.
Well, I cannot thank you enough for your time. It's been an honor to speak to somebody that I've admired for a while. I wish you nothing but success for the future. Just keep doing what you're doing. You're changing lives one podcast at a time, and it's been an honor to have you on.
Thanks, Ian. It means a lot, brother.
Talk soon. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Thanks, Sean.
That's it for another week. Thanks for listening. Absorb it, practice it, use it. Until next time, keep trying to hit that next level in your life.